Admiral Zara Chun stood on the bridge of her command ship, watching the enemy fleet grow larger on the screen. The red dots kept multiplying until they covered half the display. She had seen this before, but never so many ships at once. The hegemony had brought everything they had to finish the war. How many? She asked her tactical officer. Over 3,000 ships, Admiral. Maybe more behind them. Zara felt her stomach drop. Her fleet had barely 200 ships left. Most were damaged from the last battle. Half her pilots were rookies who had never been in real combat. The enemy outnumbered them 15-1. Time until they reach us? 6 hours, Admiral. 6 hours. That was all the time left for the human colonies in this sector. Maybe all the time left for humans anywhere. The war had been going on for so long that most people couldn't remember when it started. Zara's grandmother had fought in the early battles. Now Zara was fighting what might be the last one. The hegemony called themselves the rulers of the galaxy. They had conquered dozens of species over the centuries. Humans were just another problem to solve. But humans had been harder to break than most. They kept fighting even when they should surrender. They kept hoping, even when hope made no sense. Commander Kai Okafor walked onto the bridge. His flight suit was still wet with sweat from his last mission. Dark circles under his eyes showed he hadn't slept in days. None of them had slept much lately. Report, Zara said. Kai pulled up his data on the main screen. We got close enough to listen to their communications. The enemy is calling this project Earthfall. They want to end what they call the human myth. What myth? Earth, Admiral. They think our homeworld is just a story we tell ourselves. Something that never really existed. Zara stared at the data scrolling across the screen. Enemy radio chatter filled with references to crushing the last human delusion. They spoke about Earth like it was a fairy tale. A lie that kept humans fighting when they should give up. The truth was more complicated. Earth did exist, or had existed once. But the records were unclear. Centuries of war and running had scattered human knowledge across the galaxy. Ships fled so fast they left behind history books and star charts. Whole colonies lost touch with each other. Stories became legends. Legends became myths. Most humans born in the outer colonies had never seen Earth. Many believed it was destroyed long ago. The hegemony had worked hard to erase all paths leading back to humanity's origin. They burned libraries. They destroyed navigation data. They wanted humans to forget where they came from. Do we have any records of Earth's location? Zara asked her science officer. Fragments, Admiral. Old star charts in the archive section. But they're coded in pre-war navigation systems. We'd need a quantum navigator to make sense of them. Zara looked at the enemy fleet on her screen. They would arrive soon. Her ships would fight and die. The station would fall. Another human world would go dark. The pattern had repeated itself across the galaxy for decades, but something in the enemy communications bothered her. Why did they care so much about a myth? Why waste time talking about Earth if it wasn't real? The hegemony was practical. They didn't fight stories. They fought threats. Commander Okafor, she said. How many ships do you think could break through their lines? Kai studied the tactical display. Maybe one, if it was fast and small. The exploration ship Meridian might make it. She's got the best engines in the fleet. And a quantum navigator? Yes, Admiral. Captain Vasquez knows those old systems better than anyone. Zara made her decision. It was probably stupid. It was definitely desperate. But desperate times called for desperate choices. If the colonies were going to die, at least they could try to solve one last mystery. Get me Captain Vasquez. Captain Elena Vasquez appeared on the communication screen within minutes. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and steady hands. She had spent her career exploring dead systems and forgotten worlds. If anyone could find Earth, it would be her. Captain, I have a mission for you. It's dangerous and probably impossible. Those are the best kind, Admiral. Zara sent her the old star charts and the enemy communications about Earth. I want you to find our home world. Use whatever clues you can piece together. If Earth exists, if it's more than just a story, we need to know. Elena studied the data for several minutes. Admiral, these charts are ancient. Even if I can decode them, Earth might be gone by now. It might have been destroyed centuries ago. Or it might not be. The enemy seems very interested in making sure humans stop believing in it. That suggests something worth believing in. Understood, Admiral. When do we leave? Now, before the battle starts. Take whoever you need, but travel light. If we're all going to die here, at least someone should know the truth about where we came from. Elena nodded. We'll find answers, Admiral. I promise. The communication ended. Zara turned back to watch the enemy fleet. They were closer now. She could see the shapes of individual ships. Massive dreadnoughts surrounded by clouds of smaller vessels. Weapons that could crack planets. Shields that had never been broken. Her own fleet looked tiny in comparison. Worn ships held together with spare parts and stubbornness. Crews who had been fighting too long with too little. But they were still here. Still human. Still willing to stand between the enemy and the defenseless colonies behind them. All ships, Zara broadcast on the command frequency. Prepare for battle. We know the odds. We know what's at stake. We fight not because we can win, but because we must try. For every human world. For every child who deserves a future. For the hope that somewhere out there, our people still remember who we are. The fleet began moving into battle formation. Fighters launched from carrier bays. Weapon systems powered up. Shields flickered to life around damaged hulls in the distance. The Meridian broke away from the formation and jumped to hyperspace. Zara watched until the exploration ship disappeared among the stars. Maybe Elena would find nothing but empty space and dead worlds. Maybe Earth really was just a myth. But maybe, just maybe, she would find something worth the galaxy's attention. Something that would give meaning to all the sacrifice and loss. Something that would prove humans were more than just another species waiting to be conquered. The enemy fleet opened fire, and the last battle for the human colonies began. The Meridian raced through hyperspace at maximum speed. Captain Elena Vasquez stood in the navigation room, studying star charts that were older than most civilizations. The quantum navigator hummed and clicked as it tried to make sense of coordinates written in long-dead computer languages. Any luck, Dr. Webb? Elena asked the man hunched over a data terminal. Dr. Marcus Webb looked up from his work. He was thin and pale, with the kind of intense focus that came from spending years studying things most people had forgotten. As the ship's archaeologist, he specialized in human history from before the Great Exodus. These charts are fascinating, he said. They reference stellar positions from over 800 years ago. But the navigation codes are encrypted with military-grade security. Someone really didn't want this information to fall into the wrong hands. Navigator Yuki Tanaka worked at another console, comparing the ancient charts with her grandmother's personal collection. She was young but skilled, with an almost supernatural ability to read stellar drift patterns. Her family had kept navigation secrets for generations. Captain, Yuki said, I think I found something. My grandmother's charts mention a system called SO. The coordinates match some of the encrypted references in the station archives. Elena moved to look over Yuki's shoulder. The display showed a complex web of stellar positions and hyperspace routes. Most led to systems that had been empty for centuries. But one path, carefully hidden among false coordinates and dummy routes, led to something the charts called Terra Prime. Terra Prime, Elena repeated. That could be another name for Earth. It fits the pattern, Dr. Webb said. Early human colonists often gave their homeworld multiple designations. Earth, Terra, Gaia, home. They were trying to preserve the knowledge while making it hard for enemies to trace back to the source. The ship's communication system chimed. Elena activated it to find her tactical officer on the screen. Captain, we're picking up pursuit signatures. 3 hegemony search fleets closing fast. They're using deep space hunters, the kind built for long-range tracking. Elena cursed under her breath. She had hoped they would have more time before the enemy noticed their departure. The hegemony took human exploration very seriously. They had spent decades making sure no human ship could find its way back to wherever humans had come from. How long until they catch us? At current speed, maybe 2 days. But if we drop to normal space to investigate anything, they'll be on us in hours. Elena looked at the star charts again. The path to Sol system would take them through several intermediate stops. Ancient human colonies that might have preserved more information. But each stop would risk capture. Set course for the first waypoint, she decided, and prepare the ship for combat. We're not running away empty-handed. The first stop was Kepler 442b, a dead world in a system that showed signs of human habitation centuries ago. The meridian dropped out of hyperspace near a planet that had once been green and blue. Now it was brown and gray, its atmosphere thin and cold. Orbital scans revealed the ruins of cities and spaceports. Most were too damaged to explore safely. But one facility, built into the side of a mountain, still showed power signatures. It's a research station, Dr. Webb said as they studied the scans. Pre-war construction. The computer systems might still be intact. Elena made another difficult choice. Take us down. 1 hour to search the facility. Then we leave whether we find anything or not. The landing team consisted of Elena, Dr. Webb, and 2 security officers. They wore full environmental suits and carried portable power units. The research station's corridors were dark and cold, but the main computer core was still functional. Dr. Webb connected his equipment to the ancient systems. Data flowed across his screens, most of it corrupted or fragmentary. But some files had been preserved in military-grade storage systems. Captain, look at this, he said excitedly. Navigation logs, personnel records, and something called the Terra Protection Protocol. Elena read over his shoulder as the files decoded themselves. The research station had been part of a network designed to hide Earth's location. The scientists had deliberately scattered false information across human space, while preserving the real coordinates in encrypted form. They knew this war would happen, she realized. Even 800 years ago, they were preparing for the day when humans would need to find their way home. There's more, Dr. Webb said. References to something in Sol system. Not just Earth, but defensive installations, shipyards. The logs mention interdicted space and protected zones. Yuki's voice came through their communicators. Captain, the hegemony ships just dropped out of hyperspace. We need to leave now. Elena grabbed the data storage devices Dr. Webb had filled with information. They ran back to their shuttle as weapon signatures appeared on their scanners. The Meridian lifted off just as enemy fighters began strafing the research station. Back in space, Elena studied the recovered data while Yuki plotted their next jump. The information painted a strange picture. Earth hadn't been abandoned or destroyed. It had been hidden. The early human colonists had left not as refugees, but as part of some larger plan. Captain, the tactical officer reported, the enemy is launching hunter-killer probes. They're trying to track our hyperspace signature. Can we lose them? Maybe, if we take the dangerous route through the Void Nebula. But those energy storms could tear us apart. Elena looked at the star charts again. The path to Sol system led through increasingly dangerous regions of space. Areas marked with warnings in multiple languages. zones that even the hegemony avoided. Why would they mark these areas as forbidden? She wondered aloud. Dr. Webb was still analyzing the research station data. Captain, I think I know. Look at these energy readings from the Void Nebula. They're not natural. Someone built something in there. Something big enough to affect local space-time. Defensive systems? Maybe. Or maybe something else entirely. The research logs mention Guardian protocols and final contingency plans. It sounds like Earth didn't just hide. It prepared. Elena made her decision. Set course for the Void Nebula. If we're going to find answers, we might as well find all of them. The Meridian jumped into hyperspace, heading toward a region of space that appeared empty on every modern star chart. Behind them, the hegemony search fleets followed, determined to stop humans from discovering whatever truth lay hidden in the darkness. As they traveled deeper into forbidden space, Elena began to understand why the enemy was so desperate to maintain the myth that Earth was just a story. If the research station data was accurate, Earth wasn't a lost home world. It was something much more dangerous. It was a promise waiting to be kept. The ship's sensors began detecting strange energy signatures ahead. Massive structures hidden behind stealth fields. Automated systems that had been waiting in the darkness for centuries. Captain, Yuki said, her voice filled with wonder. I'm reading artificial gravity wells. Orbital installations. This isn't empty space at all. Elena stared at the sensor display as it revealed the truth about what lay hidden in the Void Nebula. Whatever the early humans had built here, it was vast beyond imagination. And it was still active, still waiting, still watching. The search for Earth had become something much bigger. They weren't just looking for a lost world anymore. They were approaching the edge of a secret that had been kept for 8 centuries. A secret that might change the balance of power in the entire galaxy. The Meridian dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Void Nebula. What they found made no sense according to every star chart in the galaxy. The space that should have been empty was filled with massive structures, hidden behind energy fields that bent light around them. Captain, Elena Vasquez stared at her sensors in disbelief. How many installations are we detecting? Hundreds, Captain, her tactical officer replied. Maybe thousands. They're spread throughout the entire nebula. Some are the size of small moons. Dr. Webb worked frantically at his console, trying to analyze the energy signatures. These stealth fields are incredibly advanced. They're not just hiding the structures from sensors. They're making this entire region of space appear empty to anyone passing through. Navigator Yuki compared their readings with her grandmother's charts. Captain, the old maps mark this area as the first garden, but they don't explain what that means. Elena studied the tactical display. The nearest structure was only a few million kilometers away. It looked like a space station, but one built on a scale that dwarfed anything in human colonial space. Weapon emplacements covered its surface like metal thorns. Take us closer to that station, she ordered. But slowly. If those are defensive systems, I don't want to trigger them by accident. As the Meridian approached, more details became visible. The station's design was clearly human, but built with technology far beyond anything in the colonial databases. The hull materials seemed to shift and flow like living metal. Energy conduits pulsed with power that would require multiple fusion reactors to generate. Captain, the communications officer called out suddenly. We're being scanned. Something just sent a very powerful sensor beam right through our shields. Elena felt her heart race. Any response from the station? Not yet, but wait. I'm detecting movement. Multiple contacts launching from the station. On the main screen, small craft emerged from hidden bays in the massive structure. They moved with impossible grace, accelerating and turning in ways that should have crushed their crews with gravitational forces. But they weren't attacking. They were taking escort positions around the meridian. "This is strange," Elena muttered. "They could destroy us easily, but they're just watching." Dr. Webb looked up from his analysis. "Captain, I think our ship's computer is communicating with their systems. There are data packets being exchanged, but they're encrypted beyond anything I can decode." "What kind of data?" "Identification codes, maybe? Our ship registry?" "I'm detecting references to colonial authorization protocols from the pre-war era." The communication system suddenly activated without any input from the crew. A voice spoke in clear, unaccented standard human. "Colonial vessel Meridian, you are entering protected space under emergency protocols. Transmit your colonial identification and state the nature of your emergency." Elena exchanged glances with her crew. The voice was definitely human, but it spoke with an authority that suggested massive resources and absolute confidence. Whoever these people were, they had never learned to sound defeated. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Terran Colonial Alliance exploration vessel Meridian. We are fleeing hegemony forces and searching for information about Earth's location. Our colonies are under attack and facing extinction." There was a long pause. When the voice returned, it carried a note of sadness mixed with grim determination. "Understood, Meridian. We have been monitoring the hegemony advance. Your colonial designation has been verified. You will be escorted to Terra Prime for immediate briefing." "Terra Prime?" Elena asked. "You mean Earth?" "Affirmative. Follow the escort vessels. Do not deviate from the prescribed course. The defensive systems in this region will react to unauthorized movement." Elena looked at her crew. Dr. Webb was practically vibrating with excitement. Yuki stared at her navigation displays with wonder. Even the tactical officers seemed amazed by what they were witnessing. "Follow the escort," Elena ordered. The small craft led them deeper into the hidden installations. Elena began to understand the true scale of what had been built in this region of space. Automated shipyards stretched for hundreds of kilometers. Mining facilities carved asteroids into raw materials. Massive reactors provided power that could supply entire star systems. This isn't just a hiding place, she realized. It's a complete industrial infrastructure. Whoever built this has been preparing for war on a scale we can't imagine. The escort led them past defensive platforms that made colonial military bases look like children's toys. Weapon systems that could probably destroy entire fleets with single shots. Shield generators powerful enough to protect planets. All of it built with human technology, but advanced far beyond anything the colonies had ever achieved. "Captain," Dr. Webb said quietly, "I'm reading massive databases in these installations. Historical records, scientific research, cultural archives. It's like someone preserved all of human knowledge and then spent centuries improving on it." Finally, they approached a structure that dwarfed everything else they had seen. It appeared to be a planet-sized space station, but its surface was covered with cities and forests under transparent domes. The escort led them to a docking bay that could have held 1,000 ships the size of the Meridian dot as they landed. Elena saw other human ships in the bay, but these weren't colonial vessels held together with spare parts and desperation. They were sleek, powerful craft that radiated confidence and advanced technology. Crews moved among them with the efficiency of people who had never known defeat. A delegation waited for them at the airlock. The leader was a woman who appeared to be in her 50s, but her eyes held the weight of much longer experience. She wore a uniform that Elena recognized from historical records, the blue and silver of Earth's original Space Force, but updated with modern materials and insignia. "Captain Vasquez," the woman said as Elena stepped off her ship. "I am Fleet Admiral Sarah Chan Okafor Earth Defense Command. Welcome to Terra Prime Orbital Station. We have much to discuss and very little time. Elena stared at the Admiral's name patch. Chun Okafor. The same family names as Admiral Zara. Chun and Commander Kai Okafor back at the dying colonial fleet. Admiral, are you related to? Your Admiral Chun is my great-great-granddaughter, Sarah replied with a slight smile. The Okafor family has served Earth defense for 6 generations. We have been watching the colonial war very carefully. Watching? Elena felt a surge of anger. Our people are dying out there. Entire worlds have fallen. Where has Earth been? Admiral Chun Okafor's expression became serious. Earth has been preparing, Captain. Preparing for the day when the scattered children of humanity would need their home world to step forward. That day has arrived. She gestured toward the massive structure around them. This station is just one of hundreds. Earth itself has been transformed into something the galaxy has never seen. We have spent 8 centuries building the strength to face threats that would destroy normal civilizations. But why wait? Why let the colonies suffer? Because, Captain, we needed to know that humanity could survive on its own. That our people would maintain their spirit even in the darkest circumstances. The colonies have proven that beyond doubt. Now it is time for the galaxy to learn why Earth was never conquered. Elena followed the Admiral through corridors filled with advanced technology and confident personnel. Everything she saw suggested a civilization that had never known desperation or defeat. A human society that had grown strong while their scattered children fought for survival. The hegemony believes Earth is a myth, Admiral Chun Okafor said as they walked. They've worked very hard to maintain that belief. Soon, they will learn the difference between myth and promise. They entered a command center that overlooked the massive docking bay. Through the transparent walls, Elena could see ships launching and returning in constant streams. The scale of activity suggested preparations for something enormous. Admiral, Elena said, what exactly has Earth been preparing for? Sarah Chun Okafor turned to face her with eyes that held the cold fire of absolute determination. The end of the hegemony, Captain. The liberation of every species they have enslaved. The day when the galaxy learns that some things are worth waiting 8 centuries to do properly. Admiral Sarah Chun Okafor led Captain Elena Vasquez and her crew through the orbital station toward the central command center. Through massive transparent walls, Elena could see something that took her breath away. Earth hung in space before them, but it was nothing like the blue-green world from ancient historical records. The planet blazed with artificial light. Orbital rings circled it like golden chains, connected to the surface by elevator cables that stretched up from floating cities in the clouds. The continents were covered with geometric patterns that could only be massive urban complexes. Energy shields surrounded the entire world, making it shine like a star. That's not the Earth from our history books, Dr. Webb whispered in amazement. No, Admiral Chun Okafor agreed. This is what Earth became after 8 centuries of uninterrupted development. We've transformed not just the planet, but the entire solar system into something the galaxy has never seen. She gestured to displays showing the wider Sol system. Every planet and major asteroid had been modified. Mars glowed red with terraforming atmospheric processors. Jupiter was surrounded by orbital mining platforms that harvested its gases. Even the outer planets hosted massive installations that stretched across their moons. How many people live here? Elena asked. Current population across the Sol system is approximately 400 billion, the Admiral replied casually. Most live in orbital habitats or underground cities. We learned long ago that surface area is a limiting factor only if you think in 2 dimensions. Elena felt dizzy trying to process the numbers. 400 billion people in one star system. The entire colonial frontier only had a few billion humans spread across dozens of worlds. But how? She asked. The colonies barely have enough resources to maintain basic technology. How did Earth build all this? Admiral Chun Okafor smiled. Because we never had to run, Captain. Never had to rebuild after defeats. Never had to scatter our people and resources across the galaxy just to survive. While the colonies were fighting for their lives, we were solving the fundamental problems of energy, materials, and space. They entered the command center, a vast chamber filled with holographic displays and control stations. Officers moved with quiet efficiency, monitoring data streams from across the galaxy. Elena noticed that many of them looked far older than should be possible, but moved with the energy of young adults. Life extension technology, Admiral Chun Okafor explained, noticing her confusion. One of the first problems we solved after the colonies departed. When you have centuries to work on a project, you need people who can live long enough to see it completed. Dr. Webb stared at a holographic display showing the hegemony's advance through colonial space. You've been watching the war. You know what's happening to our people. Why didn't you intervene sooner? The Admiral's expression became serious. Because intervention is not something Earth does lightly, Dr. Webb. When we act decisively. The colonies needed to prove they could maintain human values under the worst conditions. They needed to show they would never surrender their independence, even facing extinction. She activated a larger display that showed the full scope of hegemony space. The enemy controls over 12,000 star systems. They have enslaved hundreds of species. Their military includes millions of ships and trillions of soldiers. A conventional war against them would last centuries and cost billions of lives. Elena studied the display. The hegemony's territory was vast, but she noticed something odd about the data. These intelligence reports are incredibly detailed. How do you know so much about their internal operations? Because we have been preparing for this war since before it began, Admiral Chun Okafor said. Earth's strategy has always been to let the enemy reveal their full strength before showing ours. We needed to understand exactly what we would be facing. She touched the control, and the display shifted to show hidden installations throughout the galaxy. For 8 centuries, we have been building bases in regions the hegemony considers empty space. Deep space construction facilities, weapons research stations, fleets hidden in interdicted zones. The enemy believes they control the galaxy, but they have never seen Earth's true reach. Navigator Yuki stared at the display in wonder. My grandmother's charts? They marked some of these locations. She was carrying information about Earth's hidden bases? Your grandmother was part of a network that maintained contact between Earth and the colonies, the Admiral confirmed. Volunteers who carried encoded information across the frontier. We needed to monitor colonial development and ensure the navigation data for finding Earth was never completely lost. Elena felt overwhelmed by the scope of what she was learning. Admiral, if Earth has this much power, this much technology, why maintain the secrecy? Why let the galaxy believe humans are just another weak species? Because, Captain, the galaxy's political structure depends on the belief that overwhelming force always wins. The hegemony rules through fear and the assumption that resistance is futile. When we reveal ourselves, we will not just defeat them militarily. We will destroy the very concept that allows such empires to exist. The Admiral led them to another section of the command center, where tactical officers were coordinating with fleets throughout the galaxy. Elena saw status boards showing hundreds of hidden human installations coming online simultaneously. Earth Defense Command has been developing weapons and strategies specifically designed to counter hegemony tactics, Admiral Chun Okafor explained. Quantum disruptors that attack molecular bonds. gravitational manipulation systems that can trap entire fleets, dimensional shields that make our ships effectively invulnerable to conventional weapons. Dr. Webb examined a display showing Earth's industrial capacity. These production numbers are incredible. You're building ships faster than most colonies can build ground vehicles. We have automated manufacturing systems on a scale the galaxy has never seen, the Admiral agreed. When you have unlimited energy, unlimited materials, and unlimited time, production becomes a matter of engineering rather than economics. A communication alert interrupted their tour. Admiral Chan Okafor activated her personal communicator to receive a priority message. "Admiral," a voice reported, "we're receiving distress signals from the colonial fleet at Haven Station. Admiral Zara Chun's forces are under final assault. Estimated time to complete destruction, 6 hours." Elena felt her heart sink. The colonial fleet was dying while she stood in the most advanced facility humans had ever built. "Admiral, we have to do something. My people are fighting a hopeless battle." "No, Captain," Admiral Chan Okafor said quietly. "They are fighting the most important battle in human history. They are proving that humans will never surrender, even facing impossible odds. That is exactly the message we need to send to the galaxy." She turned to address the command center. "All stations, this is Admiral Chan Okafor. Initiate Operation Homecoming. Authorization: Terra Prime Alpha. Send the word to all hidden installations. The interdiction is ending. Humanity steps forward today." Throughout the command center, officers began activating systems that have been dormant for centuries. Status boards lit up with the signatures of fleets emerging from hidden bases across the galaxy. Elena watched in amazement as the scope of Earth's secret preparations revealed itself. "How many ships?" she asked. "The first wave consists of approximately 200,000 vessels," Admiral Chan Okafor replied. "Follow-up waves will deploy as needed. We have been building for 8 centuries, Captain. The hegemony is about to learn the difference between controlling space and owning it." Elena stared at the tactical displays showing massive fleets converging on strategic points throughout hegemony space. This wasn't just military intervention. It was the revelation of a human civilization that had spent 8 centuries preparing for one perfect moment. "Admiral," she said quietly, "what happens after the war?" Sarah Chan Okafor smiled, and for the first time, Elena saw the weight of centuries in her eyes. "After the war, Captain, the galaxy learns what it means to live without fear. What it means when the strong protect the weak instead of exploiting them. What it means when humanity keeps its promises." She gestured toward Earth, brilliant in its orbital shields. "The colonies proved humans can maintain their values under any conditions. Now Earth will prove that power guided by those values can reshape the galaxy itself." War Prime Thector stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the final human resistance collapse. Haven Station's shields flickered and died under the massive bombardment. The pathetic colonial fleet was down to fewer than 50 ships, most of them damaged beyond effective combat capability. "Status report," he ordered his tactical officer. "Human fleet strength reduced to negligible levels, War Prime. Their defensive positions are failing. Admiral Zara Chun's command ship has lost main power. Estimated time to complete destruction, 30 minutes. Thector felt satisfaction wash over him. This battle would end the human problem once and for all. No more desperate raids on supply convoys. No more colonies that refuse to surrender even when facing certain death. The galaxy would finally be rid of the species that had somehow learned to hope without reason. "Signal all ships," he commanded. "Prepare for final assault. I want every human vessel destroyed, every station reduced to debris. Today, we end the myth of Earth and crush the last human delusion." The hegemony fleet moved into position for the killing blow. 3,000 ships surrounded the dying colonial force. Weapons charged for a synchronized strike that would erase human resistance from this sector of space. Admiral Zara Chun stood on her darkened bridge, watching her tactical displays flicker and fail. Half her crew was dead or wounded. The ship's main reactor was offline. The few remaining fighters had no ammunition left. Around her, the last human ships prepared for a final desperate charge. Admiral, her communications officer, called out weakly. "We're receiving a transmission from Commander Okafor's fighter wing. They're requesting permission for a kamikaze attack on the enemy flagship." Zara closed her eyes for a moment. So many good people about to die. So many families who would never see their loved ones again. That they would die as humans, free and unbroken. "Tell them," she began, then stopped as every sensor on her ship suddenly screamed warnings. Space itself seemed to tear open around Haven Station. Massive quantum signatures appeared on every screen, readings so intense they overloaded half the remaining sensors. The fabric of reality rippled and twisted as something enormous forced its way through dimensions. War Prime Thector stared at his displays in confusion and growing alarm. "What is happening? Report." "Unknown contacts emerging from hyperspace. War Prime. Energy signatures beyond anything in our databases. Multiple massive vessels materializing throughout the battle zone." The first Earth defense ship completed its transition into normal space. It was a dreadnought the size of a small moon, its hull gleaming with metal that seemed to bend light around it. Weapon ports opened along its surface, like the eyes of some vast predator waking from sleep. Behind it came others. Hundreds of ships, then thousands. Each one larger and more advanced than anything the galaxy had ever seen. They moved with impossible grace, ignoring gravitational forces that should have torn them apart. Their hulls bore the blue and green colors of Earth alongside, symbols that had not been seen in space for 8 centuries. Admiral Zara Chun watched in stunned amazement as the Earth Defense Fleet took positions around her dying forces. The nearest dreadnought was close enough that she could see details of its construction. Weapon systems that looked like they could crack planets. Shields that distorted space around the entire vessel. A transmission reached every ship in the system simultaneously. Broadcast on all frequencies in perfect standard human. "This is Earth Defense Command. First Fleet, Admiral Sarah Chan Okafor commanding. Colonial vessels, withdraw to minimum safe distance immediately. Hegemony forces, you have 30 seconds to surrender. Unconditionally before we demonstrate why our world was never conquered." War Prime. Thector's blood turned cold. Earth, the human homeworld. That was supposed to be a myth. A story told by defeated colonists to maintain false hope. But the ships surrounding his fleet were undeniably real, and their technology made his most advanced vessels look like primitive toys. "Impossible," he whispered. "Earth is a legend. Humans are a weak species. They run and hide instead of fighting." His tactical officer's voice shook with fear. "War Prime, I'm reading weapon signatures that don't match any known technology. Energy outputs that would require the power of multiple stars. These ships, they're not just advanced. They're operating on completely different scientific principles." The 30 seconds elapsed. Admiral Chun Okafor's voice returned, carrying the weight of 8 centuries of preparation. "Your silence is noted, War Prime Thector. Earth Defense Command does not make idle threats." The first demonstration was targeted at a hegemony cruiser on the fleet's outer edge. A beam of pure energy lanced out from the nearest Earth dreadnought. The cruiser didn't explode or burn. It simply stopped existing, leaving behind a perfect sphere of empty space where matter had been converted directly to energy. "Quantum disruptor technology," Admiral Chun Okafor's voice explained conversationally. "Molecular bonds severed at the subatomic level. Very clean, very efficient. We developed it specifically for situations where conventional weapons would cause excessive collateral damage. Panic spread through the hegemony fleet. Ships began breaking formation, some trying to retreat, others opening fire on the Earth vessels in desperate hope of inflicting damage. Their weapons struck shields that seemed to absorb infinite amounts of energy without weakening. War Prime Thector attempted to rally his forces. All ships concentrate fire on their lead vessel. They cannot be invulnerable. The response was swift and terrible. Earth defense ships didn't just return fire. They demonstrated technologies that rewrote the rules of space combat. Gravitational manipulation systems grabbed fleeing vessels and held them motionless. Dimensional weapons opened holes in space that swallowed enemy ships whole. Energy beams that somehow curved around obstacles to strike targets hiding behind cover. Within 10 minutes, the hegemony's overwhelming numerical advantage became meaningless. Ships that had never known defeat found themselves trapped, disarmed, and helpless against technologies they couldn't understand or counter. War Prime Thector's flagship, attempting to retreat, suddenly found itself surrounded by a gravitational field that prevented any movement. His engines strained uselessly against forces that held him as easily as a child holds a toy. "This is impossible," he broadcast on all frequencies. "No single species can possess such power." "What are you?" Admiral Chun Okafor's response carried sadness mixed with implacable determination. "We are what humanity becomes when it has 8 centuries to prepare. When it develops without interference. When it grows strong not through conquest, but through the protection of its values. You spent so much effort convincing the galaxy that Earth was a myth. You never considered that Earth might be a promise. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted less than an hour. When it ended, the hegemony fleet had been completely neutralized without the destruction of a single Earth vessel. Most enemy ships were disabled rather than destroyed. Their crews held in gravitational fields that prevented escape but preserved life. Admiral Zara Chen received permission to come aboard the Earth flagship for debriefing. As she walked through corridors filled with technology beyond her understanding, she met Admiral Sarah Chan Okafor in person for the first time. "Great-great-granddaughter," Sarah said with a smile. "You have done the family proud." The colonial fleet's stand at Haven Station will be remembered as the moment humanity proved it would never surrender. "Admiral," Zara said, still overwhelmed by what she had witnessed, "what happens now?" "The hegemony controls thousands of systems. This fleet, no matter how advanced, can't be everywhere at once." Sarah's smile became something that would have terrified their enemies. "This fleet, Admiral Chun, is just the first wave. We have spent 8 centuries preparing for today. Earth Defense Command is currently emerging from hidden bases throughout the galaxy. By tomorrow, every hegemony stronghold will face liberation fleets equipped with technology they cannot match or understand." Through the flagship's transparent hull, Zara could see more Earth vessels arriving. Massive ships that dwarfed even the dreadnoughts. Support vessels carrying technologies that could rebuild entire worlds. This wasn't just military intervention, it was the systematic dismantling of the galaxy's largest empire. The colonies proved humans can maintain their values under any circumstances. Admiral Chun Okafor continued. "Now Earth will prove that power guided by those values can reshape the galaxy itself. The hegemony's reign ends today. Tomorrow, we begin building something better." War Prime Thector, held aboard an Earth detention vessel, transmitted his final message to Hegemony Command. Earth was not a myth. Earth was not a destroyed world hidden in the past. Earth was a promise. A promise that humans would return when their people needed them most. The galaxy belongs to humanity now. We never understood what we were fighting. Across the galaxy, Earth defense fleets emerged from hiding places that had remained secret for centuries. The systematic liberation of enslaved worlds began immediately. Technologies that could restore damaged planets. Weapons that could neutralize any resistance without unnecessary destruction. Most importantly, a demonstration that strength guided by wisdom could accomplish what force alone never could.